there be a quiz I wasn't paying attention? I'm kidding. E.
Absolutely. Remember when we used to say that more?
Absolutely.
I don't know if you can tell, but can you see how much of an allergic reaction my eye is having right now to the pollen?
No.
It's swollen. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't sure. I wanted to wait until we were recording to say that, but
it's dummy thick.
Is it?
Yeah.
Shoot. Well, anyway, let's hope I can see for this. That will be good.
Yes.
Hello, class, and welcome to Point of View Academy. Someone wise once said that you learn something new every day, and in this series, one of us will teach the other about a topic they don't know much about. The teacher of the episode will give a brief lecture to the class, but the student must pay attention because there absolutely will be a quiz at the end. And today's lesson, psychology and graduate programs in psychology. Grab your backpacks, marble notebooks, and don't forget to give your teacher a piece of fruit because class is in session. Are you ready to learn?
Yes.
We haven't done an Academy episode this year yet, in a while, really.
No, we haven't. The last one, I believe, was OCD, and it was episode 54. And here we are.
Was that the most recent, or was Conspiracy Theories?
OCD was the most recent.
Okay.
Conspiracy Theories was,
July
I believe,
4th.
number 43.
Okay.
Yes.
Wait.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I did 2 in a row?
Yes, you did.
I didn't do 2 in a row, because you did Lady Gaga first, then I did Moya Moya, then you did... No, then I did Conspiracy Theories, and then you did OCD.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Look, I got the teacher off topic.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Did you bring me a piece of fruit?
I didn't.
As we said in the intro.
I brought you Dragon Whispers by Polar Seltzer Jr. I have my purple pen. I'm ready to take notes. I'm already drawing doodles in the corner. Let's do this.
There is a 5-question quiz at the end. Hopefully they're not challenging. We haven't done one of these in a while again, but...
I know. So far, I have an A plus 100 average.
Yes.
I think you have a 95.
Yeah, because I think I don't know how many questions you had for... I got 100% on the OCD.
Yes.
One. I don't know how many questions you had for Lady Gaga, but I think I only got...
You got...
4 out of 5 if you had 5.
I think I gave you like a 90. I think you got like a 4.5 out of 5. The listeners can go back and listen.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, welcome to Point of View Academy. Welcome back to Point of View Academy. As we said in the intro, today's topic is psychology and graduate programs in psychology because of my announcement last episode that I will be pursuing Loyola's clinical PsyD, clinical psychology, or PsyD in clinical psychology program in the fall. So I wanted to follow that up with an Academy episode about psychology and about the different paths for graduate school in psychology because some people don't know what a PsyD is or that you can even, or all the different options for you if you want to pursue that.
And for the people that don't know, PsyD stands for Psyduck, hashtag gotta catch 'em all.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. But I'll let you tell me what it stands for, because to
great.
be honest, I don't know. Psychology degree, maybe?
Close.
Hot.
Do you know what PhD stands for?
No.
It's not in like the regular sense of like P stands for something, H stands for something, D stands for something.
Psychological distress.
Psychological distress. PsyD. Yeah. I'm sure I'll have a lot of that definition of PsyD as I go throughout the program. But anyway, I wanted to start from the beginning. I also want to preface that in the nature of our previous episode, I was a lazy. So we're gonna go ahead and laugh if you want to laugh.
No, it wasn't laughing. I was too late. I was gonna copy you.
Oh, you were gonna copy me. I wanted to start at the beginning, and I was really lazy, and I decided I wanted to use ChatGPT to just help me come up with something with the history of psychology, because that's what my bachelor degree is in, and bachelor of science degree is in, and I just didn't feel like doing a whole semester's worth of information about that. So full transparency, use ChatGPT as an outline, but then I did my own thing and edited it. So anyway, history of psychology. Here's what ChatGPT very much started with. The study of human behavior and mental processes is not a new concept. It can be traced back to ancient civilizations like Greece, Egypt, and China, where philosophers and scholars pondered questions about the nature of human existence, consciousness, and behavior. Okay, now here's where my information kind of starts to blend with what they provided. However, the development of modern psychology can be attributed to a few key figures and events. One of the most important figures was Wilhelm Wundt, a German psychologist who established the first psychological laboratory at the University of Leipzig in the late 19th century. Wundt believed that psychology should be an experimental science and focused on studying human perception, sensation, and cognition. He used methods like introspection, where participants would describe their thoughts and experiences. We might see that as reflection, to study the human mind, and he was also an interdisciplinary scholar with writings in philosophy, psychology, and physiology. Around the same time, an American psychologist, William James, published The Principles of Psychology, which became one of the most influential psychology textbooks of all time. James argued that psychology should focus on the study of consciousness and subjective experience rather than just observable behavior, which I will get to in a moment. He believed that psychology should be based on observations and experiences of individuals and that every person's perspective is unique, which kind of sounds like the psychodynamic, or actually the humanistic theoretical orientation of psychology, which I can get to a little bit later as well.
I'm so for this quiz. What was James's last name?
Well, James was his last name, but William was his first name.
William, not to be confused with Willem Bunt.
Yeah, William and Willem Wundt. Yes.
Willem Wundt. All right, I'll allow it. He came in Wundt, am I right?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways.
William James's text, again, The Principles of Psychology, assimilated mental science to biological disciplines and treated thinking and knowledge as instruments in the struggle to live. So basically treated psychology kind of like biology, chemistry, and just treated it similarly to the other types of natural sciences in the world at that point. Sigmund Freud, which I'm sure all of you know, is another important figure in the early development of psychology. He founded psychoanalysis and the psychodynamic theoretical orientation and emphasized the role of unconscious processes in behavior. Freud believed that human behavior was influenced by unconscious desires and conflicts that could be explored through talk therapy. He emphasized childhood experiences and that may have continuing repercussions on one's mental health in the present and later on in life. You might know this as Sigmund Freud was very interested in dreams. His whole theory of development was kind of like weird and just strange in the fact that if you're heteronormative, if you're born like sex male, that your first crush was your mom, and if you're born sex female, that your first crush was your dad, and depending on how that conflict was, I don't want to say solved, but I guess navigated, helped to kind of give the psychologist an understanding of how you are psychologically going through life. Kind of an interesting person, very in tune with the unconscious. Not unconscious, subconscious. Unconscious would be different.
That's where we get Freudian slip.
Exactly.
I know a thing or two.
Yes. He also talked about the id, the superego, and the ego. Have you heard of these?
Nope.
Nick? So the id is he says
two of them.
You've heard of which one?
Ego and superego, but I don't know what they mean. But
you probably have heard them in different contexts. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So these are three parts of the mind that Freud theorized. The id is the pleasure-driven, unconscious urges of the human mind. So kind of the more like animalistic. If you're a biology major, kind of more like brainstem type of urges. The superego is more kind of the frontal cortex, the executive functioning, morals, and kind of the more pieces of the brain that are associated with like humans and less so animalistic. So basically the part of the brain that understands that this is how you're supposed to act in society and without even really realizing it. So that's the superego. And then the ego mediates between the id and the superego. So it's why humans are able to kind of go back and forth. It's why we're not just, crazy animalistic beings all the time. And it's also why we're not, holier than thou all the time. There's the ego that kind of mediates between both where needed. And Freud believed that when these parts of the mind were in conflict, it can cause stress as well as psychological and psychiatric issues. Any questions there?
No.
There's two more things I want to get to in terms of the origins of psychology, but
No, but that's so interesting. I'm very interested.
what, just the theory of like the id, the superego, and the ego?
Yes.
Yeah. Last figure I'll mention here is John Watson, another big name in the origin story of psychology who championed behaviorism and believed that psychology should focus solely on observable behavior and its environmental causes. Watson believed that behavior could be conditioned through rewards and punishments, kind of like classical conditioning. Him and Pavlov, who is famous for Pavlov's dog, where when the bell rings, he associates the bell with food and the dog salivates. Have you heard of this?
Yes, and it's so disgusting. I wish he had used a different example, because like dogs salivating makes me want to actually like jump out this window.
But they had they worked. Watson viewed Pavlov's work kind of like negatively at one point, but then really liked it, and so there was an interesting dynamic there. But as you can kind of tell in terms of like the behaviorism, it's very similar. And just the environmental factors, Watson believed that environmental factors played a significant role in shaping humans' behavior. And there's a constant question within the field of psychology, honestly, and in life, which is the concept of nature versus nurture, right? Mm-hmm. How much is naturally part of just our genetics, part of just nature as it goes, and how much is taught to us by our parents, by older figures, by our mentors. And so if you look at different psychologists from history, really significant figures, each one has a little bit of a different take on the nature versus nurture debate. I'm sure my take is different than, somebody else who's interested in psychology. So it's an ongoing debate. I don't think there's really a right answer, but I do think that's important to mention here, because while all of these psychologists have made significant impacts on the field, it's a science, right? And science is never really complete. So while we continue discovering things, it's just important, I think, to keep in context that it's a science.
Yes, of course. I don't know about you, but I came out of my mother singing Shania Twain, so yeah. That's an argument for nature.
Science.
Yes. I was going to say that's an argument for nature.
For nature, yeah.
Yes.
Knowing Shania Twain lyrics.
Yes.
I think that's an argument that your mom listened to a lot of Shania Twain.
Shania Twain. No, I don't think that was it. I think I was just a little fruity.
Oh, I see.
Go on.
I see.
Sorry, teacher.
So as you can tell, over the many, many years that psychology has kind of become, evolved and become what it is today, it's diversified, it's grown into many different subfields as well. So, those subfields consist of social psychology, cognitive psychology, developmental psychology, counseling psychology, and clinical psychology, among other things. So that's kind of the end of chapter 1, which we're talking about the origins of psychology. I think it's important to note that counseling psychology and clinical psychology are the programs that I applied to for graduate programs. Again, Loyola is a PsyD in clinical psychology. That's where I'll be attending. But there's a lot of really cool different subfields that do a lot of cool work that I'm interested in as well. So hopefully I'll be able to touch on that. Any questions before we move on to the next piece?
No.
All right, cool. So let's get into that. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between clinical psychology and counseling psychology. So now I'm reading from a book called The Insider's Guide to Graduate Programs in Clinical and Counseling Psychology by John C. Norcross and Michael A. Sayette.
Same.
This has kind of been my my Bible, if you will, for applying to programs. Anyone who's interested in applying to graduate programs in clinical and counseling psychology, whether it be master's or doctorate, but especially doctorate programs, I would suggest getting this book. It gets published, I believe, every year, and it has all of the programs that are APA accredited in both the United States and Canada, with ratings and professor interests and kind of where they are in the research versus clinical kind of scale of how they lean. It was very, very helpful. I highly recommend getting it. But anyway, I'll be reading from that to kind of differentiate between the two. So getting back to it, clinical psychology. Clinical psychology is probably what most people think of when they think about just the practice of psychology. The definition states that the field of clinical psychology involves research, teaching, and services related to understanding, predicting, and alleviating intellectual, emotional, biological, psychological, social, and behavioral maladjustment applied to a wide range of client populations. The principal skill areas essential to clinical psychology are assessment, intervention, consultation, program development and evaluation, supervision, administration, conduct of research, and application of ethical standards. Just to provide some context, 41% of clinical psychologists in America right now work in private practice, 26% work in universities or colleges, 8% work in medical schools, and 5% in VA facilities, while 4% are in outpatient clinics, 3% in psychiatric hospitals, and another 3% in general hospitals, while another 10% are placed in child and family services, correctional facilities, rehabilitation centers, school systems, health maintenance organizations, just to name a few. So you can kind of see the variety of different settings that clinical psychologists can work with. I would also like to point out that clinical psychology stems from kind of that stereotypical medical model where a client might come in, you'll assess them, you'll try and get a diagnosis, and then you'll, based on the assessment, and then you'll treat them. While counseling psychology, which I'll get to in a moment, came from actually vocational counseling. So kind of helping people trying to figure out what they want to do for careers, and has a little bit of a more holistic approach to things, although, as I'll mention later on, but I'll mention it right now, both fields are very, very, very similar, which kind of contributed to my challenge with figuring out what type of programs I wanted to apply to. I applied to both clinical and counseling psychology programs, but ended up in the clinical program, but it made my decision very hard just because they're so closely aligned. Okay. I'm talking very fast and my voice is like, I'm coughing now because it's like my throat's getting dry.
That's okay. This episode, I have to say, as I'm like listening to it and not talking, I'm hearing it in my headphones. It's very much ASMR-like. I should really shut up more often.
And just let me talk into my microphone like I am.
Yeah. This is great.
Well, thank you. I mean, you've heard me lead like meditations and examens. I can I feel like I can have a calming voice sometimes.
What a calming voice that Justin do.
That calming. That was very like New York.
What a calming voice that Justin
calming. Okay. So even though I talked about slightly the difference between clinical and counseling psychology, I want to get into there are 7 main differences between the two fields. So graduates of counseling psychology doctoral programs are eligible for the same professional benefits as clinical psychology graduates, such as psychology licensure, independent practice, and insurance reimbursement. The APA, or the American Psychological Association, ceased distinguishing many years ago between clinical and counseling psychology internships, which are the 5th year or the last year of your doctorate program. And there's one list now of APA accredited internships for both clinical and counseling psychology students. Both types of programs prepare licensed doctoral level psychologists who provide healthcare services. I'm going to pause there and just talk a little bit about the typical structure of psychology school. So if you go for a doctorate, your first couple of years, kind of like the first 4 years in a PsyD program, are classes mixed in with clinical practice. And then that 5th year is kind of like your what would be equivalent to a residency if you went to med school. So that 5th year is a full-time paid internship. In order to apply for that, you have to go through another application process. It's called a national APA match. Ideally, you want to match to an internship that is APA accredited, and you spend your entire 5th year working underneath that placement, and it's usually paid. So you're not really paying tuition that year. You're just doing that, and then you can graduate with your doctorate after you do that. So when I say internship, that's what that is. If I say practicum or externship, that's the clinical training you get while still in school in classes, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, so the 7 differences between clinical psychology and counseling psychology, according to Norcross and Sayet. First, clinical psychology is larger than counseling psychology. In 2021, there were 247 APA accredited doctoral programs in clinical psychology compared to 72 active APA accredited doctoral programs in counseling psychology. Number 2, clinical psychology graduate programs are almost exclusively housed in departments or schools of psychology, whereas counseling psychology graduate programs are located in a variety of different departments and divisions. So sometimes a counseling psychology program could be housed in like the schools, a university's school of education, for example, instead of like the psychology department. Number 3, clinical psychology graduates are more likely trained in projective and intellectual assessment, whereas counseling psychology graduates conduct more career and vocational assessment. Those applicants particularly interested in vocational and career assessment should concentrate on counseling psychology programs, according to this book. But I would also agree with that. Although I'm sure, depending on the program, you can maybe get vocational career assessment training in a clinical program, but again, depends on the program, and that might be more rare. Number 4, counseling psychologists more frequently endorse humanistic / existential and multicultural approaches to psychotherapy. So that's kind of the person-centered approach, and kind of understanding someone's overall view, kind of the intersectional identities that someone might hold, what they're doing in their career, bigger picture, as I might say. Whereas clinical psychologists are more likely to embrace behavioral and cognitive behavioral orientations. With that being said, I am someone who likes to have that humanistic, multicultural approach, whole picture type of view.
I was going to say, that sounds like you. That must have made the decision quite difficult.
Quite difficult. But I am in a, or enrolled in a clinical, I've deposited, not enrolled yet, but in a clinical program. But you know, you have to compare each program. I can't emphasize that enough. When you're doing something like this, you have to compare, for instance, like Loyola's clinical psychology program to another school's counseling psychology program. You can't, it's difficult to compare when you're in the weeds of it, general clinical versus general counseling, because each program is a little bit different.
Okay.
Number 5. Relative difference involves entry into counseling psychology programs. Fully 1/3 of doctoral counseling psychology programs require a master's degree prior to entrance. Essentially, no clinical psychology programs require a master's degree before admission. I thought that was kind of interesting.
You said counseling was 1/3?
Counseling, yep, is 1/3.
Require
a master's degree prior to entry.
Okay.
Number 6. Research and APA figures consistently reveal that 15% more clinical psychologists are employed in full-time private practice than are counseling psychologists. On the other hand, 10% more counseling psychologists are employed in college counseling centers than are clinical psychologists. And then 7, and the final difference that is mentioned here, clinical and counseling psychology faculty overlap considerably in their research pursuits, but also specialize in a few areas. The counseling psychology faculty are far more likely to perform research pertaining to minority/multicultural issues, with 69% counseling psychology faculty doing this type of research versus 32% of clinical programs. And vocational/career testing is 62% more in favor of counseling psychology versus 1% of clinical programs. The clinical faculty, in turn, are far more interested in research pertaining to psychopathology populations such as ADHD, mood, personality disorders, and activities traditionally associated with medical settings such as neuropsychology, pain management, and pediatric psychology. So, a little bit of a hopefully I can paint a clear picture there on the difference between clinical psychology and counseling psychology. I don't know if you have any questions at this point or if that was just an overload of information, or both.
No, but I swear to God, this episode's like a self-fulfilling prophecy where we're going to be on like Point of View season 27 and it's just going to be Justin like diagnosing me and like, you know, being my therapist live on the air. Maybe we'll be doing it live by then.
That'd be cool. We'll do a radio show.
But it's someone's therapy. That would actually be, oh, they call that Dr. Phil, but I don't think he's
or
licensed
Dr.
to
Laura.
practice
Have you ever
anymore.
heard Dr. Laura on Sirius XM?
No.
Oh,
That's
she's ruthless.
I mean,
she gives like relationship advice to people.
it's so hot. All right. Anyways.
Okay, so no questions.
Nope. Only comments.
Only comments? Okay.
Always. I gave it to you.
Okay, so last piece before we get to the quiz, I wanted to talk about kind of the different educational paths. Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were just beginning. Whoa.
Well, we're already like 30 minutes in.
Class flies. When you have a soft-spoken teacher. Okay.
Here I am. Hello.
Here he is.
So I wanted to talk about the different educational paths in psychology graduate school. So if you're interested in just kind of being a therapist, being a counselor, you can go the doctorate route. You can go or you can go the master's route. The biggest thing when kind of understanding choosing between the two, at least according to Norcross and Sayet, and I would also agree with that, is the three questions to consider are: what are your professional goals? What are you willing to sacrifice? And what do you want your credentials to be? Some people just want the doctorate because it's like, hey, I can be called Dr. Do, or I can be called Dr. Gervasi. You know, I would hope that there's more than that, because PsyDs take anywhere from 4 to 6 years and PhDs can take 5 to 7. So, you know, it can be helpful to just, you know, be interested in it besides being called doctor. But that's something that I wanted to bring up. Like I said, it depends on what your professional goals are. If psychotherapy is the only thing that you want to do, then you don't need to spend the time, money, and you know, other things that you might sacrifice doing a doctorate program. A master's level professional a master's level program will suffice just fine. Even a master's in social work, if you wanted to do that, go that route. But that's kind of the main thing. The doctorate piece adds the research piece to it. So you get training in research, you get training in clinical practice, clinical training. If you get a doctorate in psychology, PsyD, or a doctorate of philosophy in psychology, a PhD. So there's the difference. PhD stands for Doctorate of Philosophy.
Okay.
And a PsyD stands for Doctorate of Psychology. So anyone who has a PhD, they have a Doctorate of Philosophy in their specific field. So you can have a Doctorate of Philosophy in clinical psychology or in history, or, you know, probably many of your college professors had PhDs. So they had a Doctorate of Philosophy in their given field, while a PsyD is a doctorate in psychology, in counseling psychology or clinical psychology.
I'll allow it.
Yes. I'm glad you'll allow it. There's also, when it comes to psychology, two big differences with the two doctorate program offerings. So like I said, if your goal is to just be a therapist, learn a little bit more about mental health, a master's program is quicker, usually 2 years, cheaper because it's 2 years. However, PhD programs are often fully funded, and PsyDs aren't, which kind of stinks. That's something that's important to consider. So it's specifically in psychology, there are the two models for doctorate programs are the Boulder model, which is the PhD model, and the Vail model, which is the PsyD model. So I'm going to just kind of explain both and then tell you the differences. So the Boulder model, the first came from the 1949 Boulder Conference. At this conference, which was held in Boulder, Colorado. Maybe that's why it's called the Boulder model. Get it? Get it? You're all smart. Get it?
From your roommate back in Boulder, we ain't never getting older.
Absolutely. The Boulder model. So at this conference, equal weight was accorded to the development of research competencies and practice skills. This dual emphasis resulted in the notion of the clinical psychologist as a scientist practitioner. So if you hear programs that are in the Boulder model that offer PhDs in clinical psychology, they'll say we practice the scientist practitioner model. Clinical psychologists were considered first and foremost as scientific psychologists and were to have a rigorous, broad-based education in psychology. Their training would encompass statistics and research methods with core courses in development, biopsychology, learning, and others. The emphasis was on psychology. Clinical was the adjective. The Boulder Conference proved a milestone for several reasons. First, it established the PhD as the required degree, and in other academic research fields. To this day, all Boulder Model Scientist Practitioner programs in clinical psychology award the PhD degree. Second, the conference reinforced the idea that the appropriate location for training was in fact within university departments, not separate schools or institutes, as in medicine and law. So instead of going to medical school or law school, you still just went to a university and studied psychology. You didn't need to go to psychology school. And then third, clinical psychologists were trained for simultaneous existence in two worlds, research scientific and practice professional. Boulder model psychologists are frequently characterized as the practitioners among the scientists and the scientists among the practitioners. So that was kind of the development of, okay, if you're going to get a doctorate degree in psychology, you're going to get a PhD. And that was again established in 1949. I'm not going to quiz you on dates. I'll just tell you that right now.
Oh, shit, I just wrote it down.
These
are the messiest notes I've ever taken.
I'm sure. I've been talking a million miles an hour. I'm so sorry. These questions are going to be easy, though.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. Oh, you think? I'm going to show you how I can overthink something real fast.
You get that test anxiety up again.
Yeah.
How many years has it been since you graduated and experienced that, you know?
I think 3.
Yeah. So
I used to measure my years in school, and now that I don't have school, I have nothing to measure it.
Yeah.
Measure them with.
Supervisors? Anyway.
Yeah. 3 of them.
Yeah. Supervisors or restaurant owners? You could do it that way.
Yes.
Honestly,
honest to God, Lady Gaga eras.
There you go. NG6?
I've shown my fruitiness once again.
As he sips on his dragon whispers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Vail model is the PsyD model, the development of the PsyD side. Can you guess, since the previous one was in Boulder, Colorado, can you guess where this one was?
Vail.
Colorado.
Oh, Colorado. Okay.
Yeah, Vail, Colorado.
Don't they just smoke weed now?
Yeah. Well, I feel like
generalize.
I feel like they say that about Massachusetts too.
Yeah.
Anyway, some dissension with the recommendation of the Boulder Conference emerged at later training meetings. However, there was a strong consensus that the scientist practitioner model, the PhD degree, and university training should be retained. But in the late 1960s and early 1970s, change was in the wind. Training alternatives were entertained and diversification was encouraged. The sentiment culminated in the 1973 National Training Conference held in Vail, Colorado, hence the Vail model. The Vail conferees, I don't like that word at all. The Vail conferees endorsed different principles than the Boulder model, leading to a diversity of training programs. Psychological knowledge, it was argued, had matured enough to warrant creation of explicitly professional programs along the lines of professional training in medicine, dentistry, and law. These Vail model professional programs were able to be added to, not replace, the Boulder model programs. There was also a clear mandate that students selected for these professional programs be chosen from a pool of socially responsive, culturally diverse, and professionally sensitive applicants, instead of favoring grades and the GRE scores alone. Further, it was proposed that different degrees should be used to distinguish the scientist role, PhD, Doctor of Philosophy from the practitioner role, PsyD, Doctor of Psychology. Graduates of Vail professional programs would be practitioners or scholar practitioners. The focus would be on practice. So, in my own words, if you get a PhD in clinical psychology, your emphasis is more on research and less on clinical practice training. If you get a PsyD in clinical psychology, your emphasis is more on practice and less on research. However, you get experience in clinical practice and research in both types of programs.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I am getting a PsyD, so that means that I will have more emphasis on clinical practice versus research, but I want to get the training in both.
That makes sense. You don't like being alone. That
Alone.
was so. That sounded so weird.
Alone with my thoughts. Yeah.
Alone.
Alone.
That's what I was thinking of. No, I just meant more like you're more of a people person.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, I get excited about research that can be applied to the clinical field versus just like, all right, let's do this research, let's get it published and yada, yada, yada. So that's why I chose the kind of the PsyD route instead of the PhD route.
Okay.
And also because I don't see my career being explicitly research or research heavy. If I do research, I want it to be in something that I'm inspired by. That was, I don't know, that came up from my clinical experience.
Well, good for you. No, I'm kidding. I don't know why I wanted to say it like that.
That was so backhanded. Like
No, it was intentionally backhanded though. Like I was like, I don't know why, but I wanted to say it that way. I don't know where that came from. Anyways, no, I'm actually, I think that this is incredible that you're doing this, and I give you so much credit because I personally don't think I could ever go back to school.
PhD in marketing?
I'm all set.
Okay. So as I said, the primary disparity between Boulder Model and Vail Model programs lies in the relative emphasis on scientific research. The Boulder programs or PhD programs aspire to train producers of research, while Vail programs train consumers of research. However, Vail Model programs, PsyD programs do, and graduates do produce a lot of research as well. So I wouldn't underestimate my program and PsyDs across the world. This is the last point that I want to make, which is really important. Several studies have demonstrated that even though the PsyD model has come out later and is a newer training model, again, it came out in 1973 versus the PhD model coming out in 1949.
They both sound old to me.
Yeah. There are several studies demonstrating that the initial worries about employment difficulties and licensure uncertainty, and just in general second-class citizenship for university-based PsyDs have not materialized. So people are respected whether they have a PhD or a PsyD, and that was also important to me as well because I didn't want to go through a doctoral program and then all of a sudden the field looks at me and like, oh, you have a PsyD? Like that, those do not exist. And while Vail Model graduates may be seen as second-class citizens by some Boulder traditionalists, this is not the case among healthcare organizations or individual patients. So whether you get a PsyD or PhD, you still can be called doctor. And again, just generally, this isn't for everyone. You know, like there are some, as it said, Boulder Model traditionalists that are like, "Ooh, you're a PsyD, so you're not a real psychologist." Completely false.
Listen, I just call him David, and he helps me immensely. Okay.
Yeah, your therapist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And he is.
Do they have a doctorate degree?
I don't know what he has, but I will say he's very intelligent and works at the hospital that I went to, which is, I'm not going to say what it was, but it's very esteemed, and he also works at Harvard, so I trust him. That's all I know.
Because if you get a master's, you can get like an LCPC or a master's in social work, like licensed LCSW, licensed clinical social worker, or licensed family practitioner and stuff like that. But then if you have a doctorate, then you're just called doctor or whatever. But yeah, like I said, if your goal is to practice therapy and counsel, then if that's all you want to do, that's fantastic. You can get a master's and you don't have to do 5 years of 5 to 7 or 4 to 6 years of school. If you want to seek to do more than just that, then a doctorate is the way to go. That's all I have for you. Are you overloaded with information?
No, I'll just be going. See you next time.
Okay, I'll see you. Just skip the quiz.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any
All right, I'm
questions
ready.
for me before the quiz?
No, I don't think so. Also, I love the sticker.
Yeah, I put it on my microphone. Point of
I'm
view.
gonna have to get you. I'm gonna have to get you a 2023 one.
Yes, there's. Although I like this color scheme, I do.
Okay, it's nice, but you know what else is nice? The 2023 one. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
that also is too. I just like, my favorite color
But
is orange.
I love our banter. I'm not gonna lie.
My favorite color is orange, so I like this one has some orange in it.
Yes, I love
Appreciate
it.
that. Okay, here we go with the quiz. Let's turn the
With the
lights
quiz.
down. Do you want to be a millionaire? Name 2 differences between clinical and counseling psychology.
Let's do it. How about we do that? I believe clinical psychology right now has a larger group of, I'll say participants, but that's not the right word, than counseling psychology. I believe so.
There are
That's
more
one of
training
them.
programs in clinical
Yes.
than counseling.
Yes,
Mhm.
thank you.
Yep.
I'm here all day. And then let's see, which one do I want to pick next? Let's see. I believe 15% more clinical practitioners are employed in private practices. I said practices. Practices. Then I'm going to go with counseling practitioners.
Yes. So
God, that's so
consistently, 15% more clinical psychologists are employed in full-time private practice than counseling psychologists are.
Okay, let me give one more just because I am a little nervous that those were a little bit shaky. 1/3 of counseling. Ooh, I don't know if it's jobs or programs. You know what? I'm going to take that back. I'm going to take it back. Oh, here we go. Counseling endorses a more humanistic, person-centered, intersectional approach, whereas clinical kind of focuses on a more behavioral cognitive structure.
Yep.
Thanks,
I'll
Steve.
accept it. Deej?
Alright. Teach.
Oh, teach. Yeah. Very good.
Thanks.
All right. You get full credit on that one. This next one's a true or false. Research has shown that Vail model PsyD students have a slightly more difficult time gaining licensure and employment than Boulder model PsyD students do.
Licensure and employment. See, here we go with the overthinking. I want to say.
I can reread it if you want me to.
Yes, please do.
Okay. True or false? Research has shown that Vail model PsyD students have a slightly more difficult time gaining licensure and employment than Boulder model's PhD students do.
I think that's false.
I'll wait
Is
for
this-
you to say final answer before I.
Oh, I don't like that. That makes me nervous. I don't know. What was the position that they're having? Is this a trick question?
Do you want me to put it in the chat?
No.
Okay.
I feel like
I mean, I myself am a visual learner, so I feel like having it in the chat can be helpful.
This is how I used to manipulate my teachers into giving me the answer to. Research has shown that Vail model PsyD students have a slightly more difficult time gaining licensure and employment than Boulder model PhD students do. No, that's false. That's false because they're both licensees.
This is saying gaining licensure. It's not that they're
Yeah.
both licensed, but like in the process of gaining.
No, so I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say false, and I'm gonna lock it in. And if it's wrong, I get my first wrong question on Point of View here at the Academy.
It is false.
Slay. I'd like to thank the Academy.
I'd like to thank the Academy. Remember how I made such a fuss about that one?
Yeah. Why? Yeah. No.
I said, you don't remember that I made such a
Oh,
fuss?
well,
I
yes.
said-
Well, you talked about, it's nothing. It's not like a second-class citizenship, but I thought you meant more like public perception and getting clients.
Yeah, so it says several studies have demonstrated that initial worries about employment difficulties, licensure uncertainty, and second-class citizenship for university-based PsyD students have not materialized.
Yep, exactly. And I remember not materialized. That's what I mean by the overthinking. I
Yeah.
said at the very beginning, I want to say false, but let me break it down real quick.
We get a front row seat to
Let me have a breakdown real quick.
your test anxiety.
All right, 2 out of
Okay.
2. Let's go.
All right,
The
number
teacher's
3.
helping me.
Number 3. I want you to succeed. Like all teachers, like all good teachers, we want you to succeed.
Okay.
Number 3.
All right.
What type of program will I be attending at Loyola? I want the degree and
Well, that's
the field.
PsyD. That's a PsyD, but I have this. Hold on, I have this. Here we go. Ready? Hold on. I have 5 pages of notes. I just want to make sure I have the exact word. I have. So you're doing clinical. Clinical. Well, you applied to both clinical and counseling, but you're doing clinical, which was interesting because I think of it more as counseling being the more humanistic approach, but clinical PsyD is what I believe you're doing. And I put it on the Instagram caption, so now I'm really shooting myself in the foot.
Final, is that locked in? Final answer?
Well, I don't know if there's like another part to it, like clinical PsyD, but is there something else? Hold on. I have a lot of notes here. No, I think I want to lock this in. This really is showing test anxiety. Yeah, I think I'm gonna lock that. I'm gonna lock that in.
That's correct.
So segs.
the wave of relief that goes over your
Well,
face.
because I've said the right answer all 3 times, but I've doubted myself for a good 2 minutes. And I want listeners to hear this, because if you weren't here, and this is why I used to go up to teachers during the test after they said not to, because I needed to I don't know. I feel like if I hadn't said anything to you, I would have switched my answer just for fun.
Yeah.
And then worried about it for a week while the teacher graded it. That's what's good about these episodes.
Yeah. Okay. Question number 4.
Yes.
Name one psychologist I talked about in the beginning and one of their beliefs.
Oh, okay. Well, this one I'm gonna knock out of the park. Well, here we go. Willem Wundt, right? Am I right? You know what? I'm not going to talk about him. I'm going to talk about Sigmund Freud. I'm going to talk about Sigmund Freud because he believed in his approach was, examining unconscious desires and conflicts, and there were these 3 different types of, or not types, but 3 different sides of the brain, not actual sides, but the id, the
parts
ego,
of the
and
brain,
parts
of the mind.
Yes, id, ego, and superego. Id was more like the pleasure, unconscious urges, more animalistic, whereas the superego was the morals, the more humanistic side, and then ego is the mediator of the two, which causes, when those 2 sides, the 2 polar sides, are in conflict, it causes stress and psychological issues. And then there's John Watson, who championed behaviorism and environmental causes and Pavlov's dog and conditioning. Am I right? Am I right?
You got extra credit there. That's good. You did more than one.
See, I needed to, because the first 2 were really shaky.
All right, that was number 4. Last and final question. Open-ended, short answer essay.
A short answer. I can't do that.
Explain why someone would want a doctorate over a master's degree in psychology, or vice versa.
Okay, so this one's kind of easy, because one of the reasons is, they want to be called doctor, but that's kind of a shallow.
But give me more than that, because
yeah. So that's why I'm going to. We're far from the shallow now. Let me just flip to my notes here. Here we go. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Oh, that's why they'd want to be. Oh, you have to think about if you want to go for a shorter amount of time or a longer amount of time. So, hold on. This is kind of rough. Let me look at this. If your goal is to, I don't know, this is where I just start spewing things that are semi-related. If your goal is to be a therapist, the master's program might be a better option, because it's 2 years. There's only 2 years. It's cheaper, but a PhD. I don't know if you asked. I forgot the question. But if you said PhD, it's fully funded, whereas the PsyD is not. So if you wanted to do that, that sounds fun and fresh. If you wanted to go longer, which I don't know why you would, if that was your reason, explain why someone would want a doctorate over a master's degree or vice versa. Thank you, Justin. I think I gave some. I gave some. Yeah, PhD.
You gave me some PhD versus PsyD.
That's so hot.
You gave me a cup, maybe one.
Well, if you're more interested in research versus being in the field, that would be a doctorate. Adds the research piece.
Yeah. God, that's exactly what I was looking for. Yep. The research piece is what you get in the doctorate side of things. If you just want to be a psychologist, or not a psychologist. If you just want to be a therapist, then you can get a master's degree and you can save a lot of money, save a lot of time. Fun fact, you can't be called a psychologist unless you have a doctorate degree, though.
Interesting.
So you can be called a mental health therapist or mental health professional or helper or therapist or counselor if you have a master's degree, but you can only be called a psychologist if you have a doctorate degree.
Or mental, depending on what side of the couch you're sitting on.
Yeah.
It's a me, Mario.
So, you get 100%. 5 out of 5.
I get 100. That was a little rough, though. I'm not gonna lie. I had to like hold your hand.
You still did get. You got 100%.
Thanks.
So,
you had to hold my hand through the.
What'd you think of class today?
It was fun. I really liked this episode more than I was expecting to, just because I thought like, oh, there's a reason I'm not going for a PsyD, because that sounds really difficult and really, I don't want to know the inner workings of my mind. I was trying to quote Patrick
Inner
Star.
machinations of my mind, as you started saying.
Yeah. Are an enigma. I was quoting Patrick.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully I made the information accessible and
you did.
That everyone can understand it.
Yeah, no, I really liked it. I learned a lot and I was interested the whole time. My hand is cramping from the notes that I wrote.
5 pages, I'm impressed.
Yeah, well, they're a little messy, I'm not going to lie.
Thank you to John C. Norcross and Michael A. Sayette for this book that I took a lot of information from, and that helped me through the application process for Psych Grad School. Thank you to the reprise of Jenny, ChatGPT, who helped me with the beginning of this episode.
Jenny.
And with that, my name is Justin Dew.
And I'm Nick Gervasi.
And you can reach us at our email, pointofviewpodcast@gmail.com, or by sending us a voice message on our website, anchor.fm/pointofview, now Spotify for podcasters. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Point of View Podcast, and Twitter at Point of View. If you enjoy our show, make sure to follow the podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts, and give us a rating or review wherever you get your podcasts as well. Or share us with a friend or family member. We really appreciate all of your support. Are grateful for it. We're lucky to have it. As always, we hope you have a great 2 weeks. We thank you so much for listening, and until next time.
Hey.